Good afternoon, everybody. Come on, good afternoon, everybody. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Good afternoon. My name is Derah Onuorah. Thank you for joining us today, and I'm joined by my fantastic colleague, Joe Fernandez, and it's a pleasure to be delivering this session on a deep dive into AI tools in Copilot Studio. Before we get started, how many of us have heard about Copilot Studio or have used Copilot Studio? Okay, a good number of us. Cool. I hope some of this stuff will be new and interesting for you. For this session, our agenda is going to be to first look at what is Copilot Studio, especially for those that may not have known it. Then we'll look at the anatomy of an AI agent. Then we'll look at tools for AI agents. We'll look at agents versus workflows, or agents and workflows. And then, of course, we'll treat you to some awesome live demos. So first, what is Copilot Studio? Copilot Studio is Microsoft's offering for you to build, manage, deploy, and secure your AI agents. You can think of Copilot Studio in 3 different flavors. First, you have the light experience. This lets you build agents with natural language inside of M365 Copilot. So your personal productivity Copilot, M365 Copilot, you can build lightweight agents inside of that Copilot. Then secondly, the full Copilot Studio experience. When you go to copilotstudio.microsoft.com, here you have access to the full suite of tools and capabilities to build robust agents. And then finally, the third flavor for advanced extensibility. You can customize your agents using pro dev tools like Microsoft 365 SDK, VS Code, and Azure AI. But now, what is an agent? Different companies, different teams, different people talk differently about what AI agents are. I think this slide summarizes our thinking behind AI agents. But fundamentally, this is digital labor, or digital teammates, or digital employees that can handle business processes in your organization. So they can automate entire business processes or automate specific tasks in a business process. And agents can really go from being simple all the way to being advanced. So when you're talking about a simple agent, you're talking more so retrieval agents. These are agents that you can ground with knowledge sources, and then you can deploy them and have people either internally in your organization or externally interact with these agents. So think of this kind of agent being an agent deployed on your customer-facing website. It has documents, it has knowledge, and it's able to retrieve that information to answer questions and answer queries. Secondly, we have tasks. You can have agents that can automate specific tasks in a business process. And then finally, you have more so autonomous agents. These are agents that have a trigger. These agents know when to figuratively come alive and start the business process. So for example, in the demo we'll actually show an autonomous agent that is triggered autonomously when a new device request comes in. So depending on how complex or how simple you want your agents to be, we let you build that in Copilot Studio. But there are several different parts of an AI agent. So this slide summarizes the anatomy of an AI agent. And there could be some things that also could be added to this from an extensibility standpoint. But fundamentally, you have a user experience. This is where people are interacting with this agent. So this could be on your company website, or in fact, you can publish agents to WhatsApp, for example. That's another user interface where people can interact with these agents. Now, agents have orchestrators. And that name may be a little bit daunting, but it actually does what the name says. It orchestrates. Because your agent has different parts of it, it has knowledge and tools like I'll talk about shortly, the orchestrator needs to know what to use, when to use it, and how to use it. So the orchestrator forms the logic and the autonomous component of an agent. Then you have knowledge. Knowledge grounds your agent. These are documents, databases, sources that ground your agent's execution. And then you have tools, which is really the main focus of this session. So I think of knowledge and instructions as a manual for how to build something. But now, figuratively, you need to give your agent the hammers and the nails to actually get that task done. That is where tools come in. and of course, the foundational models. You have, in Copilot Studio, you have models like models from the GPT family, as well as Claude models, and other models you can bring from Azure AI Foundry. So like I mentioned, the core of this session is tools for AI agents. And this slide here summarizes our bucketizing of certain tools. And these tools can spill over into different categories. But when we think about tools, we're thinking about some tools that can connect to systems. These are things like custom connectors or MCP servers or web search and REST APIs. They can connect to systems. And then second bucket, tools that can actually perform operations or do certain things, such as workflows or agent flows as we have here. Computer use, as Joe will talk about shortly, giving an agent the ability to interact with a computer. We also have AI prompts that can process structured and unstructured data and code interpreter as well. So in this session, we're going to show you a plethora of tools that you can build your agents with. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. Our goal here is to inspire you to go back to your organizations and use Copilot Studio to drive change in your businesses. So with that, I'll kick it to Joe, and he'll start introducing us to some of the tools we have in Copilot Studio.
All right, thank you, Derah. Great. So yeah, let's start looking at some of the tools you can add to your agents to equip them to perform actions. I'm going to start with connectors. Connectors is a gallery of over 1,400 services you can connect to retrieve data as well as to take actions. And you have our popular Microsoft services, so SharePoint, Excel, Dynamics, and other vendors. You're going to see Jira, you're going to see Salesforce, you're going to see Slack, and many, many others. And the great thing about connectors is they all work the same way. So you just provide the credentials for the services you want to connect to, and they all work similarly. You don't have to worry about setting up like API integrations or different interfaces. Like they all work in the same way. And if we don't have a connector for a service you want to use for your agent, you can build your own custom connector. We're going to ask you to provide the API definition of that service, and you'll be able to build your own custom connector to add to that gallery. And for those of you in IT, these are great to manage. You can set up policies, you can enable it or disable it, both at the connector level, as well as each of the actions within the connector. So that's from connectors. And something that we've seen working with customers is that there's a group of actions that usually get added together into an agent. So for example, if you're building an agent to interact with your calendar, you want an agent to manage your calendar, you want to add the action to fetch those calendars, create an event, find a meeting time. And what we've done now is when you add certain Outlook and SharePoint connectors, you're going to see this group of connectors. So with a single click, you're going to be able to add to your agents a bunch of actions together. And this is being rolled out right now in Copilot Studio. Next, MCP, Model Context Protocol. It was actually just a year ago when Anthropic introduced the MCP protocol, which is a standard optimized for LLMs to basically fetch data and interact with different services. And MCP is natively supported in Copilot Studio. We have a number of built-in MCP servers that you will find, like Outlook, Dynamics, Jira, Monday.com. They're all available out of the box as part of MCPs. Or you can also bring your own MCP server. So as you can see in the screen, we have a simple wizard where we're going to ask you some information about the MCP server. You can add that information, and then you'll be able to add it into your agents. Next, AI prompts. This one is really, really cool. AI prompts is basically when you need to add to your agents the ability to reason or some cognitive capabilities. Basically, an AI prompt is a natural language instruction that you put it to perform a task. And the great thing about AI prompts is you can write a prompt, and then you can reuse it. So you can reuse that prompt across multiple agents. You can use it in workflows as well, in agent flows, or you can also use it in Power Apps. So it's a great way when you need to add some cognitive capability to just type it, and then you have your prompt ready to be able to share. And you can also customize which model runs the prompt. So you can choose between OpenAI, Anthropic, and all the different models we have available in Microsoft Foundry today. And it also comes with code generation and document generation. So really, your imagination is the limit of what you can do with prompts. You can use a prompt to summarize data. You can use a prompt to draft an email reply. you can use a prompt. What we see a lot of use cases is around document processing. So these prompts are multimodal. So you can upload files, documents, images, and they can process it. So for example, you can take your invoices and have a prompt extract the information you want from those invoices. And the only thing you need is to provide in natural language what you want to extract. You no longer have to train a custom AI model, provide like hundreds of samples, just a prompt. You upload a document and image, and you can extract whatever information you want. So we've seen already a few tools, and with these tools, you can do a lot of things. You can have your agent send emails, interact with teams, create records in ServiceNow, work with your CRM. But what we see is there's still, unfortunately, a lot of systems which don't have APIs, don't have MCP servers. So this can be all desktop applications. This can be internal applications that we build that nobody dares to modernize them because it would be way too costly. But it can also be like modern applications. So for example, if I want to automate the process of, I don't know, extracting data from a website or inputting data into a website where there's no API and there's no MCP, the only way to automate that is actually by using a mouse and a keyboard on a computer. And so for that, we have the computer use tool in Copilot Studio. So computer use is basically the ability to give your agents a computer. So it can, using a virtual mouse and virtual keyboard, it can automate those tasks. And it's been in public preview since 2 months ago, so it's already available, and you can try it out right away. And this is one of the features where it's best seen in a live demo than through slides. So let's go ahead and start with the first demo. All right. So it needs to make sure I'm logged in here. All right. Let's switch to the demo machine. So imagine the following scenario. I receive invoices like this. And every time I receive this invoice, I need to enter it into this very modern-looking application, desktop application, and basically copy the data from the PDF into this invoice. This is a task which I wish I could avoid doing it because it's very boring and the interface is just horrible. And I would love to build an agent to automate this task. But as you can imagine, this application does not have an API and even less an MCP server. But with computer use, we're going to be able to build an agent to automate this process. So let's go to Copilot Studio. Here, I've started already to build my agent. So for those of you who are new to Copilot Studio, there's a number of sections we're going to walk through together. The first thing is you can define a trigger. So an agent, you can interact via chat, or you can also define a trigger. You can say, hey, I want this agent to run every time I receive a new email, which is this case. So every time I receive a new email with an invoice, I want this agent to be triggered and start working for me. Then we define the instructions. So what do we want our agent to do? In this case, we want to first submit a new invoice using the computer use tool into the invoice management system. And then once we submit the invoice, we're going to get a reference number, and we're going to send that reference number via email. So here we're mixing the computer use tool and a connector tool. And you can mix as many tools as you want. Talking about tools, let's go to a tools section. So this is where you're going to go and add the tools to your agents. And these are all the tools we've been discussing. So we have our connectors, the 1,400 connectors. We have our MCP servers here. We can also add your own MCP servers. We have the action groups, so what I was discussing before. So for example, for Outlook, we now have these action groups where you can, in a single click, add a number of related actions to your agent. And for computer use, it's here. In new tool, we have computer use. And the only thing we need to provide is instructions in natural language of what we want to do in the computer. In this case, I've already added it, so let me just close it and open the existing computer use tool. And the only thing I provided is these instructions. So first, open the Invoice Pro 2000 application, which you will find in the Windows Start menu. Input the data from the PDF, and then give me back the reference number. There's a number of things here which I won't go into detail, but the next one is basically input. So every time we run this computer use tool, we want to process a different invoice. So I've defined invoice as a dynamic input. I can select in which machine to run, and we have a number of machines you can select from, and I'll discuss that a little bit later in the session. And other settings like human supervision and the ability to provide credentials. But let's go ahead and start and test it. So because it expects an input, it's asking me to provide an invoice sample. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the invoice, just copy and paste the whole content, and paste it like this. All right. And now is the moment of truth. And I'm going to step away so you can see that it's actually the agent using the computer and not me, and we don't have anyone backstage either. So the way what's going to happen here is going to see on the right what's happening on the computer. So this is running on a computer on the cloud. So it's a cloud PC. It's a Windows 365 machine that is running this. And on the left, what the computer use and the agent is thinking. So we see that it has already connected to the machine. It gets open the start menu. It's going to look for that Invoice Pro 2000 application, and it's going to open it. The way this works, so basically computer use is very simple, but at the same time very powerful in the sense that it uses vision to operate the computer. So it's looking at the instructions from the left, and it's looking at what's on the screen. And it's deciding, based on that, what to do next. So here, for example, there's a pop-up. Nowhere in the instructions I say, hey, what to do with the pop-up, but because it's able to see the screen, it's going to basically read the content of the pop-up. It's going to say, hey, like, this is just an informational pop-up. Let me go ahead and close it. And it's going to continue. So now it's going to find the action to add invoice, and it's going to take the data from the PDF and put it into this form. So a very simple loop where basically it's going to look at the computer and perform the task just by using vision, a virtual mouse, and a virtual keyboard. And it's going to start now typing all that information. Because we do image processing, so we look at these images and we decide what to do, it does take a bit of time to go through this. So in the interest of time, let me go ahead and switch to an already run execution. Here. So this is what you see. The activity section is basically your run history for your agent. Here you can see all the steps that the agent took. And if we click into the computer use node, we can see the full session replay. The idea of these agents of computer use is for this to run in the background. So autonomously in the background is not to watch it as we did right now. So this can run overnight, overday, can run 1,000 times, and you can always come here, and you're going to see a full session replay. So you're going to be able to verify that computer use did exactly as you expected, as well as you get a full breakdown of all the steps and all the reasoning that the agent did. And the last step is to send the email with the reference number. So in just basically with a few tools and a few natural language instructions, we were able to take a manual process, which was very boring, into now an agentic process that can go and automate this. All right, let's go back to the slides. So to recap what we just saw, for computer use, it's just a tool that you can add to your agents. And the only thing you need to configure is a natural language prompt. So you provide the steps that you want to do into computer use, and computer use will perform those steps. Then you can, as you put that prompt, you can test it with that side-by-side experience we were looking at before. So you're going to see the computer on the right, the thinking steps on the left, so you can verify that it works as corrected. If it doesn't work as you expected, you can always go back and change the instructions. Then you can go and see, as it runs autonomously, you can go to the activity section and see a full run with screenshots of what the computer use did. And this is the experience. It's something that we're launching now at Ignite. It's something new. We also have machines. So computer use, of course, needs a machine where to run. And you have three options when it comes to computer. You can start with a hosted browser, which is a machine that you all get out of the box for free. You don't have to configure anything. You can register any Windows machine that you own into computer use. And now we just announced at Ignite is we're also supporting Windows 365 for Agents machine. So from copilotstudio.com, you can create a hosted Windows 365 agent machine right away and use it for computer use with everything already set up. You can also limit which websites and application the computer user has access to. You can define credentials, and this is something new as well that we're announcing. Many of the websites and applications you want to automate with computer use will require credentials. You can either store those credentials in an Azure Key Vault, or you can also use a new built-in credential store that we have in Copilot Studio for those credentials, and computers will be able to safely use those credentials to interact with those websites and applications. And last, but certainly not least, we've also announcing here at Ignite the inclusion of human supervision. So if computer use is running autonomously, and at some point needs, hey, I need some human input to know how to continue, it's going to reach out via email. It's going to ask someone for help. That person will be able to reply to that email with the feedback and have computer use resume that back. And human supervision, human in the loop, is a critical piece of agentic automation and agentic workflows. And for that, I'm going to invite Derah back to stage to tell us more about human in the loop.
Thank you, Joe. I work with Joe, but every time I see the computer using tool in action, it's still, it still blows my mind. You're essentially giving an agent the access to a mouse, to a keyboard to control a computer. And as we begin to hand off more and more tasks to autonomous systems, human supervision has become more and more critical, right? And that's why we're excited to be expanding our human-in-the-loop offerings inside of Copilot Studio. So right now, you can add what we call a request for information tool to your agent, and you can specify instructions for why an agent should reach out to a human, and at runtime, when the agent needs to use that tool, it will send a request to a human in an email, a form like this, wait for the response, and when that human has responded, use that input back in the rest of the automation. So you can think of things like maybe you're processing invoices and you want your agent to flag it to a human when the amount is greater than $10,000. You can put that tool in your agent, and at runtime, the agent uses this to reach out to a human. So with that, I'd love to show you a quick demo of human-in-the-loop in agents in Copilot Studio. All right, so like Joe mentioned, this is Copilot Studio. Now, this agent is rather simple, but I'm just showing you this simple agent to kind of get the point across for human-in-the-loop. So of course, I have here the model, I have a trigger, and I have a set of instructions, right? I'm simply telling the agent to send a request to the vendor using this human-in-the-loop tool to collect these specific pieces of information. Of course, I have knowledge, and I have here that human-in-the-loop tool that I was mentioning. And I'll actually show you how to add it. You come to Add Tool, and it's actually right here in the suggestions already. But if it's not here, simply search for Request for Information Preview, and you can add this to your agent. All right, so now let's see how this action performs. I'm going to start a new test. And in here, I'm going to test the sample trigger. And once again, we're taking into this activity map, and we are able to see the agent use this tool. So the agent recognized that it needed to involve a human in the loop. It has filled out the inputs, which is the email to this person, the title for the request, as well as the fields that should be collected, as well as an accompanying message, right? So this, like I mentioned, is a simple use case, but you can begin to think about what you can build using human in the loop inside of your agent. So if I go to my inbox and refresh, I should see shortly an email from the agent, and there you go. So I can see right here that the agent has requested these pieces of information. So I'm simply going to type in, select currency, select a delivery date, put up the item, number 1, 2, 3, 4, a unit price, and units available. And now when I submit this, these details will go back to the agent, and the agent can use this in the rest of the processing. So that is human in the loop inside of your agent in Copilot Studio. So you can begin to think of the several different use cases you have. If an agent needs approval for a large amount, it can send a request to a human, get that approval, and continue in the rest of its process. So now let's talk about agents and workflows. We often hear from customers, when do I use an agent, or when do I use a workflow? When do I use an agent, or when do I use a more deterministic automation? And it's not really a story of agent versus workflow. We like to think of it as agent and workflow, depending on your use case. So you know that foundational models are extremely, extremely powerful. They're good for things like conversational understanding. They're good for things like reasoning and planning and multimodality. So you truly want to use an agent when you want some form of flexibility and agility in your business process, right? You want an agent when perhaps it's conversing with people. You want it to reason and understand the conversation. But for workflows, sometimes you want consistency across multiple steps. You want to ensure that your business process or parts of your business process follow the same set of steps every single time they're executed, right? And with workflows, of course, you can kind of also control the costs because you're not relying on large language models. And you can also get fine-grained change management. So like I said, it's a spectrum of agility to predictability. If you want agility and flexibility, lean more on the agent. And if you want predictability, lean more on the workflows. But you can have an agent interact with a workflow. You can have a workflow interact with an agent. So it just depends on your appetite for flexibility or predictability. And as we talk to customers, we've also seen that there are two main patterns. First, we have a more conversational pattern. You have an agent communicating, gathering context, and then dynamically selecting the right workflow to use. So this is an agent that has a workflow as one of its tools. An event happens or it's conversing with a human, it gets all the required information and then feeds that information into a more deterministic set of steps. The other pattern that we're seeing is having a workflow actually have an agentic node inside of it. So you have a workflow that follows a set of steps, but a particular node or a particular step in that workflow is a bit more dynamic, such as like a prompt that I'll show shortly. And so that's why in Copilot Studio, we have an offering called Agent Flows. And the Agent Flows let you automate tasks with structure while weaving AI-driven intelligence. So we have a platform for you to build dynamic agents, but we also have suites of products that let you build more deterministic and structured workflows. And recently, we announced two fantastic capabilities inside of Agent Flows that you may not have heard of, multi-stage and AI approvals being one of those. So you can add a multi-stage and AI approval node in your workflow such that when it gets to this step, it's able to pause and reach out to stakeholders for approvals. However, the catch here is that not all those stages in the multi-stage approval are human-run stages. Some of those stages, as I'll show, are actually AI-driven. So you can perhaps have AI be the first stage, such that if it's rejected by the AI model, then the human doesn't have to be inundated with requests that they would have otherwise rejected. And then secondly, we have request for information. This is actually the same action that powers the human-in-the-loop tool that I showed you in the agent. But here, you're able to add this to a deterministic flow. When the flow gets to that node, it pauses, sends a request to a human, gets that information, and then that information can be used downstream in the rest of the flow. So with that, now let's look at some more demos of these things in action. I know Joe spoke about AI prompts, and I'll show you a demo of AI prompts as well as AI approvals and requests for information. And let's do it. So once again, here we're in Copilot Studio. But this is the workflow that I was mentioning. This is the more deterministic, structured workflow that I was talking about. As you can see, it would always follow the same set of steps every single time. So if you want that rigidity and consistency, this is what you would use. One thing to note, however, is that this doesn't have to stand alone. This flow can be used as a tool in your agent. And in the final demo, I'll show you that as well. So we have a simple workflow here that simply extracts and checks invoice data. Now, it has several different steps. But one of the steps I want to call your attention to is an AI prompt right here. And Joe introduced it, but here's the demo. And you're seeing this in context of a workflow. However, when you save this, you can actually also use it in the context of an agent. So that's the benefit of having one platform, because all these different tools can communicate and be used across. So here, I'm simply asking the AI prompt to look through a particular invoice and then extract these pieces of information. So this is a real purchase order. And I'm going to ask the AI model to simply extract these pieces of invoice. So let's run a test. And we'll see that in a few seconds, the model is taking that document, taking my instructions, and in a matter of seconds is going to extract all that information that I asked for. Now, if you run invoice processing, I don't know about you, but I don't want to spend my time, over 100 invoices per day simply extracting this information. But with this AI-driven intelligence in my workflow, I can hand off this task to the AI model, and I can actually use these parameters downstream in the rest of the flow. Some cool things here is that you can also select the types of models you want to use. So we have managed models from the GPT family, as well as newly minted Anthropic models, Claude 4.1 and Claude 4 Opus. So you can use these models inside of your AI prompt. You can also specify the format that you want. So you can specify output formats of text, JSON, or even documents. So you can use AI prompts to generate documents as well. So like I mentioned, you're seeing this in context of a flow, but you can also see this in context of an agent. Now, similar thing like I was mentioning, the request for information action. We have that here. So I'm saying in this flow, if any information is missing, go down this branch of having the request for information action and send a request to these specified humans to collect the missing information. And I can know what's missing from that AI prompt. I can actually tell the AI prompt, flag if anything is missing, and I can use those parameters downstream in the rest of the flow. So I just showed you AI prompts, and I just showed you requests for information, AI-driven intelligence, and human-in-the-loop in your workflows. Now let's look and talk about AI approvals. This is another workflow. Inside of this workflow, I'm simply handling the approval of this invoice. And right in here, I have this run a multi-stage approval with AI action. And I'm going to click on this, and this modal opens up. So this is the multi-stage approval I was mentioning. On the left side, we see the different stages. We see first an AI stage, and then followed by a human-driven stage. And in the AI stage, similar to the prompt, actually built on top of that prompt, we are able to ask the large language model to look through all these pieces of information and make an approval decision. So I'm simply going to run this, and in a few seconds, we'll see that based on the information that was provided, the documents, the text, the large language model has made an approval decision of rejected for this reason. And in here, you can also specify what happens after a decision is made. So if you want the approval to still continue to a human, if it's approved, you can specify that here, or if it's rejected, or if it fails. This ensures that a human can actually veto the approval decision, and you don't have to rely solely on an AI model if you don't have the appetite for that just yet. So we just saw an AI prompt, and we just saw request for information action, as well as AI approvals in your workflows. And like I mentioned, you can use these workflows as tools in your agent. OK, I think I'm going to stay here because the next thing actually is another demo. So I'm not going to come back there just yet. Now we're going to see a full agent demo that uses all these tools. I'm going to walk you through the anatomy of an agent like we discussed. I'm going to show you instructions and knowledge and all those things and actually see this agent in action. So first, this is Copilot Studio once again, platform for building, managing, securing your agents. I have built an AI agent named 𝗬𝗲, the device request agent. You can see its pretty profile picture. I've given it a brief description. It's an AI agent that automates device requests. Then in here, I've also selected the model. I'm opting for GPT-4.1, but you can select other models that this agent would run on. And in here, we have a trigger. Now, a trigger is what makes this agent autonomous, because without a trigger, the agent has to maybe be awoken by conversation. But here, as soon as the new device request comes in, this agent springs to action and gets to work. So a trigger is an event that takes place to get your agent working. Next, we have a set of instructions. And notice something here. This isn't code. These aren't scripts. This is natural language. So you can instruct your agent using natural language that you and I communicate in. And I've given my agent 7 steps to follow. The first thing I wanted to do is to retrieve the request record. So when a new device request comes in, get the record. The next thing I'm asking it to do here is to request information from the manager if the current device of the requester is under 3 years old, or the requested device is a Pro or a Power, which means is of higher cost. So I'm essentially asking the manager for business justification if the requester is requesting for a device too soon or a Pro or a Power device. And it's using here that human-in-the-loop action that I mentioned. Next, we have the approval flow. So this approval flow is actually a workflow that I just showed you, but it's now being used as a tool inside of the agent. And this tool is simply handling the approval. It has an AI approval through which we'll get either an approve or reject decision. Then fourth step is using an AI prompt. After a decision is reached and a rationale is generated, we're going to use this AI prompt to generate an email that would go to the requester. So if it's approved, the email would be an approval email. If it's rejected, unfortunately, a rejection email. And then we use a connector action right here to actually take that content and send it to the requester. Finally, we'll use a Dataverse MCP server to update the records to say this has been sent or this has been approved. And then finally, we'll use a computer use tool to actually procure the device. And why are we using a computer use tool for the last part? Because that website to procure the device doesn't have an API. So as Joe showed, we're actually going to equip an agent with a keyboard and a mouse to navigate to a website and procure that device. And remember, we talked about knowledge. So knowledge are files, data sources, resources that ground the agent, that ground the responses of the agent. And then finally, we have tools. I know we showed about 6 tools. And if I come to the Tools tab, we actually see all of them. The computer use tool, the decision email generator tool, that's the prompt. The device approval flow, that's the flow. The request for information action, that's for human in the loop. Dataverse MCP server, that's for MCP. And finally, send decision email to requester, that is a connector action. So what you've seen here is an agent that has a plethora of components. It has a trigger, it has instructions, it has knowledge, and it has tools. And like I mentioned, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many more tools you can add to equip your agent to get to work for you. So now enough talking, let us see this agent in action. So I can simply publish the agent and submit a new device request, but since I've submitted a device request in the past, I'm simply going to test this or test a previous run. So we'll start testing the agent. And once again, we're taking into this activity map in Copilot Studio. The first thing it does is just to initialize the Dataverse MCP server and the computer use tool. So just warm up the systems because we're about to use them. The next thing the agent does is to use that human in the loop action. Now, why is it using this action? Because this requester has requested a MacBook Pro device. Now, this is probably out of compliance or out of policy, and the current device is less than a year old. So we've sent a request to the manager to get a business justification for this particular device. So if I go to the manager's inbox, we see just right here that Derah is requesting a replacement device. The current device is less than 1 year old. And all this is really AI generated. The agent knew what to ask the manager for and what fields to generate. So simply, as the manager, I'm going to say, Derah needs it to test macOS. So when I submit this, this goes back to the agent, and the agent can use this for the rest of the execution. So let's go back to the agent, and you can see that response that we just submitted, in a matter of seconds, comes back to the agent, and the agent is able to continue its orchestration. So the next thing it does is to call the device approval flow, right? So it's gotten all the information it needs. It's now triggering that flow that has an AI approval inside of it, giving it all the information and saying, hey, make a decision. And when the flow is done, the flow would actually pass back to the agent the decision and the rationale. So, and the next thing that happens is for us to call the decision email generator. That is a prompt that takes in this input and this rationale. So that prompt is going to take all that information and actually draft the copy for that email. And then next, we're going to use this send a decision email to requester action. And it says, hello, Derah. Great news, your request for this device has been approved. And if I go back to Derah's inbox, we're able to see here that that email was sent to Derah. And look at this. All this happened in a matter of seconds, right? And if we go back now, the next thing falls in line, the MCP server is used to update the records in Dataverse. And the fancy and famous computer use tool is up and is running. And as you can see on the right side, the computer use tool has its own device, and it's navigating to the browser to actually procure that device. And like Joe mentioned, this is something that should happen, maybe while you're asleep or while you're doing other things. You don't have to watch the whole transcript of the computer use in action. But I'd love to show you a previous run and what the agent did in the previous run. So it woke up its device. You can see here it went to a browser. It filled in the prompt for the URL for the website, and it actually successfully went to that site. I know it's not very clear, but I'm sure you can make out what that website is. And it's able to select a device, and after selecting the device, it goes all the way to confirm the purchase. Folks, this isn't just a fancy demo. This is enterprise-grade orchestration in Microsoft Copilot Studio. We have this agent in a matter of seconds. It got to work and handled this business process for us. So what are the main takeaways from this session? And like I mentioned, a lot of this is just the tip of the iceberg. It's a matter of inspiration. What can you go back and do in your organization? But as we saw, agents can go beyond just conversation. A lot of people think about agents as conversational chatbots. But as you saw, this was all autonomous. As soon as a new device request came in, it sprung to action, used the right tools to get the job done. And Copilot Studio is a standards-based platform that can help you automate with AI today. So if you're thinking of a platform to use to automate your business process, start with Copilot Studio. And then finally, don't do agents versus workflow. Do agents and workflows. Of course, they can be used independently, but the story is better together. And then we have some resources for you, so you can take a picture of this slide. Am I in the way? No. You can take a picture of this slide and go explore these tools. Go think about what can I build? What can I do with these tools? How can I impact my organization? I'll wait for a few seconds for phones to come down. All right. And of course, there are a lot of other sessions happening at this conference, some past sessions, some other sessions that are yet to happen. So please do take a picture of this slide, catch up on the recording from those other sessions, and that's it. Thank you so much for the time. We'll be up here if you have any more questions.